the 2016 Missouri Lieutenant Governor Candidates Forum, co-hosted by Brownfield Ag News and MissouriNet.
And a pleasant good afternoon, everyone, and we welcome you to today's Missouri Lieutenant Governor Forum, which is being co-hosted by MissouriNet and Brownfield Ag News. I'm MissouriNet News Director Brian Hauswirth. We appreciate you tuning in, those of you on MissouriNet.com, as well as those of you who are listening in on a number of our affiliates across the great state of Missouri as well. I'm joined by Brownfield Ag News Director Julie Harker. She is going to be my co-moderator today. Julie, great to have you with us.
Good afternoon.
Appreciate that. We're in the Dairy Brownfield studios, and we have the two major candidates for Missouri Lieutenant Governor with us here in studio, and we're delighted to have both of them with me. On my left is State Senator Mike Parson. He's a Republican from Bolivar, and on my right, on the camera's right as well, we have former Congressman Russ Carnahan from St. Louis, and both of you, appreciate you being here, and we appreciate it.
Good to be here today.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Give a little intro here, guys, as far as Congressman Carnahan, former Congressman Carnahan, and Senator Parson. We'll start with Senator Parson. He was the Polk County Sheriff and was elected to the Missouri House back in 2004, served 3 terms in the Missouri House, and was elected to the Missouri Senate back in 2010. He is in his second term in the Missouri Senate. He's running for this position. Former Congressman Russ Carnahan, I had the privilege of covering you in both the House and Senate. I covered Russ Carnahan when he was a member of the Missouri House from about 2001 to 2005. He was then elected to the United States House of Representatives to replace Richard Gephardt back in 2004, served 4 terms, and then your district essentially was redistricted after the redistricting in 2012. We appreciate both of you for coming in. I want to start with the qualifications and the role of the Lieutenant Governor. I've read the Constitution closely, and the Lieutenant Governor can preside over the Senate, can debate in the Senate, but a lot of it is more of a bully pulpit, and of course the Lieutenant Governor has to be prepared in case the Governor cannot serve or in case the Governor passes away. We'll start with you, Senator Parson. What are your qualifications for this post, and why are you running?
Well, I think one of the things I've been talking about all year since I've been running is what have you done to be qualified to be the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Missouri? And I think one of the things I've done is I want to say I've started with a humble beginning to start off with, and have been a business owner almost my entire life. I've been the sheriff of Polk County, which is basically a public servant. And then more or less I've been 2 tours of duty in the United States Army. And if I hadn't served my country, I probably wouldn't be here today talking to you. That's how important that was when I was 19 years old, when I served the country. And I think the Lieutenant Governor is a key issue to the state to make sure you move the legislation forward and that you work with your colleagues. And it's one thing to say you have an outreach with your colleagues in the Missouri Senate, but truly, can you walk across the aisle and can you work with Democrats, in my case? And I think if you go back to the day, whether it be Right to Farm, whether it be Proposition B, that I actually reached across the aisle, met with every senator, Democrat and Republican, to explain to them why those issues were so important for the state of Missouri. And I think that's a key. And I don't think that, Russ has got a voting record with President Obama, that you voted with him 99% of the time when he was in Congress. I don't think you're ever going to be able to bring people together when you have a voting record of doing those things. And I think over the time, and 2 years ago I proved I stood up against my own party when it wasn't very popular to do that. But the bottom line is you got sent, you took an oath to do the right thing in Jeff City, and you do the right thing. And you treat people fair. And for the most part, legislation that comes to the Missouri Senate, and it'll be under the Lieutenant Governor, it's about moving Missouri forward. It's not about Democrats and Republicans. It's about, okay, how do we do the things that best fit the people of this state? And I've always approached it that way. And I've been, in most part, I've been very successful to be able to work with my colleagues.
Congressman Carnahan, your response to what the senator said, and also your priorities for running, and why are you running?
Yeah, I was blessed to be raised in a family that had a front row seat to see public service. I think at its best, to see both my parents growing up being active in our community. My dad, one of his proudest roles was serving on our local school board. And so I saw that growing up. Worked farm jobs, worked my way through Mizzou, and really learned the value of hard work, being a good neighbor, and really being a good steward of the land. Those are things that I've always valued, and my career has been about half in the private sector as a business person and lawyer, and about half in the public sector. Honored to have served in the Missouri House and honored to have served in the U.S. House representing a district that was one of the most diverse in our state. Went from rural St. Genevieve and Jefferson County up to suburban and urban core of St. Louis. It was great preparation to run in this wonderful, diverse state of Missouri. So I think that background is important, but also I think my approach. And that is, I served under President Bush and President Obama. I co-chaired the bipartisan Center Aisle Caucus with my colleague, my Republican colleague, Joanne Emerson. We worked closely together to find common ground on issues across our state. That's always been my approach. And frankly, we need more of that in government. People that look for common ground, because frankly, there's no one elected official or no one party that has monopoly on common sense or good ideas. And it's one of the things that I have found in my service, looking for that common ground, looking for people on both sides of the aisle with goodwill that can come together to get things done. That's what people expect. That's my approach. And I think that's why the lieutenant governor's position is unique, because it's there to have someone prepared and ready to serve as governor if and when called upon, but also to take those constitutional duties of presiding over the Senate fairly, and those key boards and commissions that have to do with economic development, seniors, veterans, and tourism. But then, as you said, a bully pulpit championing reform in our state that is much needed.
Again, our guests here live with us on MissouriNet.com and a number of our affiliates. Senator Mike Parson, a Republican who is running for Lieutenant Governor, former Congressman Russ Carnahan as well. Senator, whoever wins this, either one of you could be working with a governor from the other party. There was a poll that came out in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch on Friday. The Coster-Greitens race, as I read it, about 1 point, 46-45, right, well within the margin of error. So, again, that's too close to call, obviously, with about a week to go. But either one of you, if you win, could be working with a governor of the other party. Don't know who that'll be yet. But let's just say you win and Chris Coster is elected governor.
Yeah,
could
sure.
you work with him?
There's no doubt that I'm going to work with the next governor. I've proven that through my legislative time, whether it was Governor Nixon, whether it was Governor Blunt. Each time I've always reached out to work with governor. If you're going to be a successful legislator in Missouri, you have to be able to work with the Senate, the House, and the governor's office. That's just it. You can't always be just one side or the other. You have to find where the ground is to move state forward. And I think the most important thing I've learned from being up here is, economic development, agriculture, education, those are not Democrat-Republican issues for the most part. They're what's good for Missouri. And you have to find ways to move forward in that. So if Chris Koster's next governor of the state of Missouri, there's no doubt in my mind I'll be able to work with him. If it's Eric Greitens, I'm going to be there every day to try to help him through the process and do what I can to make him a good governor. My job as lieutenant governor, what I see to be the lieutenant governor's role, is to do whatever you can to make the governor be successful. For what's good for the people of this state and good for Missouri. That's what's important at the end of the day. There's always going to be issues, no matter who you are, you're going to disagree with. There's going to be some social issues that go around there, whether it's a pro-life issue, whether it's the Second Amendment issues. There's going to be disagreements. But there's lots of things that you should never be disagreeing on that's good for Missouri. Like I said, when it comes to economic development, education, agriculture is number one industry in this state. That should not be ever a Republican-Democrat issue. That should be. So whoever that next governor is, I have no doubt in my mind that I'm going to be able to take my office, he's going to be able to take his, and we're going to sit down together and figure out solutions for the state of Missouri.
Former Congressman Russ Carnahan, again, the governor's race, a lot like the other races, the Canderbont race, a lot of them, as we look at the polls, too close to call. But again, if you win, and let's just say Eric Greitens wins or Mr. Coster wins, could you work with either one of those two gentlemen?
Certainly. I know them both. I worked with Eric when I served on the Veterans Affairs Committee in the Congress when he was working on veterans issues as well. So I'm familiar working with him. Certainly have worked with Chris Coster and certainly have a strong preference. I think Chris Coster will be the better governor for the state of Missouri. But regardless, our Constitution says, we elect the lieutenant governor independently. That's a choice the people make. Oftentimes they choose people of the same party. Oftentimes they don't. And so that'll be a choice for the people this time around. So I'm presenting myself as the best candidate for lieutenant governor, but also one that I think it's important to be able to work with the governor, regardless of who it is. Sure. Again, I have a strong preference, and I think there's a big difference between the gubernatorial candidates in terms of preparation. So it certainly would be my preference to work with Chris Koster, but I will work with whoever is there.
Obviously, the lieutenant governor is the only statewide elected official that is part of both the executive and the legislative branches in Missouri, and I've covered the Missouri Senate. It is interesting. Peter Kinder and many other previous lieutenant governors have been in there, some more than others, but I see many times when Peter Kinder has presided over the Senate. That's an important issue. There's also, under the Constitution, gentlemen, the lieutenant governor also is involved in aging. And a referendum passed in 1992 establishes the Office of Advocacy and Assistance for the Elderly. That would be within the lieutenant governor's office, and you would be an elderly advocate and would be involved in investigations, that sort of thing. Talk about that, and I'll start with you, Congressman Carnahan, on this one. What would you focus on in that role to be an advocate for the elderly?
Yeah, that really is a critical role for the office. It's developed over the years. I've spent quite a bit of time on these issues. When I was in Congress, organized a senior citizen advisory council. We had regular meetings. They were a very important part of the input, the work that we did to be sure that seniors were having their issues addressed in our state. We have a number of issues that impact seniors dramatically: health care, transportation, prescription drugs, and being able to stay in their homes as long as they can. One of the things we've done in traveling around the state, having rural and urban roundtables, we've made a special point to reach out to leaders in our senior citizen community to get their input. But I think having staff in your office that is sensitive to those issues, but also be willing to stand up and work with those across state government to be sure that the interests of seniors are addressed and that their interests are at the table.
Senator Parson, your senatorial district, and before that, obviously a lot of seniors, very, very rural. Your thoughts on that role? It's an important part about that particular issue about the elderly. How would you handle that?
Well, first of all, I got more gray hair, so I'm more qualified on the senior side of things, I think, sometimes. Here's the truth about seniors in the state, especially when you look at rural or urban. And I've been to both areas. And the question becomes sometimes, what is your accomplishments? What have you done for seniors? But the truth for seniors in this state, most seniors in the day used to be 65 years old. They'd end up somewhere in a nursing home or somewhere. Seniors are not like that no more. They're going to live longer. They're going to expect more out of us. They're going to expect more quality living. And how do we give them that living? How do we keep them at home as long as we can with the care we can to give them a quality life? They're going to be more involved in the economy as far as what they do, as far as travel, as vacation, and they're a great resource. The number one resource in the United States of America are senior citizens. These are people that are retired, whether they're engineers, whether they're school teachers, whether they're farmers. Those are resources for all of us to be able to utilize in the state of Missouri, and they're sitting out there every day almost asking you to ask them to be part of making Missouri better. Those are the things that are exciting to me, and how are we going to do that? Obamacare. The congressman just brought up health care. Health care is huge in this state. I mean, huge for our seniors to do this. This Obamacare situation that we're looking at in the United States of America, and especially for Missouri, is a disaster. It's a train wreck. And when seniors all of a sudden, you're going to drive up their cost, to $500 a month, to $200 a month. That's the difference between paying your bills. That's the difference between making a car payment, going to the grocery store, being able to buy medicine. And this thing has been just a total train wreck for this country. And, unfortunately, I'm sitting here the day with my opponent. I think you have to point these things out. He was a supporter of that. He was one of them that, as a Hillary Clinton surrogate, that actually come to Missouri and told people this was going to be deficit neutral in his home district. Said it was going to be deficit neutral. And not only that, said it was going to bring in money. There was going to be a surplus. And we all know that's not true. Those are the things that seniors need to know out there in the state of Missouri, the difference between me and my opponent. That's a huge issue, and it will affect seniors. It will affect all of us in Missouri.
And I will get into, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to focus on the next segment on agriculture. In our final segment, I've got several issues: economic development, jobs, transportation. But I am going to ask you both about the tone of the campaign and a couple of the ads that have come out. And you've had run an ad against him that talks about Obamacare. He has an ad about you with your former chief of staff about valet parking. Yeah. I definitely want to get into that as well. But we've got a lot more to cover. Senator Mike Parson is on my left, former Congressman Russ Carnahan on my right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to turn the microphone over to Julie Harker of Brownfield and talk about ag issues. Ag is the number one industry here in the state of Missouri. You're listening and watching to our live Lieutenant Governor Forum on MissouriNet in Brownfield and MissouriNet.com.
The 2016 Missouri Lieutenant Governor Candidates Forum, co-hosted by Brownfield Ag News and MissouriNet. The 2016 Missouri Lieutenant Governor Candidates Forum, co-hosted by Brownfield Ag News and MissouriNet.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julie Harker, News Director for Brownfield Ag News, and thank you for joining us. We have the Lieutenant Governor candidates here, and it's my turn now to talk about ag, to have you talk about agriculture, the number one industry in the state. As you both know, the office of Lieutenant Governor is not constitutionally mandated to promote agriculture. But will you, and how? Congressman Carnahan.
Yeah, thank you. As part of promoting Missouri and our amazing resources, agriculture is fundamental. We have over 100,000 individual farms across this state. I'm proud that my family farm in South Phelps County, Missouri is one of those. But from those small farms to every kind of farm you can imagine across this state, to our agribusiness sectors in the urban areas, to the export. We have 95% of the world's market is outside the United States. So we have this amazing resource. One of the things that I want to promote is really doing this very detailed agricultural resource inventory across this state for rural Missouri, because we have many of our rural communities are struggling, losing population, but they have still tremendous resources, whether it's infrastructure of rail, highways, river ports. They still have amazing assets in terms of buildings, people, businesses, but mapping out those resources by region. So it's an economic development tool for maintaining jobs and businesses here, but also recruiting them to come here. Because many of those small counties don't have that economic development capability within those counties. But by grouping them together in clusters, they can really promote their regions better. And in addition, we have great technology developing in our state with regard to innovation centers. Missouri was recently ranked the number one state for small business startups. And the other states were far behind. So it's a great thing for us to build on those resources around our state in every corner of the state, but also that new innovation and the small business startup status that we have now. Those are great tools that we can utilize to leverage those agricultural resources.
Senator Parson, if elected lieutenant governor, would you promote agriculture and how?
Well, I don't think there's any question I'm going to promote agriculture, and I think I've got a pretty good track record in Missouri of doing that for my entire career, whether it be issues that are facing the state of Missouri. But you know what? Farmers in the state of Missouri are some of the best farmers and ranchers in the United States of America, and they prove it over and over again. What they do, what our products are. And you look at the ups and downs of the economy, of what they go through, where the cattle prices, for example, are half of what they were last year, versus row crops, what corn prices are today, versus how much that went down. The most important thing we can do for agriculture in the state is protect our farmers. That's the number one thing that's lieutenant governor, and what I'll be doing every day. And what you're going to protect them from is the overreach of the federal government. That's what drives up their cost and why they can't do business the way they want to, of what it costs to buy inventory, why we don't have any young people that can get into agriculture right now because of the cost factor of it. But for Missouri to be successful, and if you just look at any statistical information, we have to double the production of agriculture in this state in the next 40 years, what it's took us 240 years to get to. So now if you can imagine that, doubling our production in the state of Missouri, in the next 40 years, well, it's took us 240 years to do that. The only way we're going to do that is through technology. It's going to be through science. It's going to be through business agriculture. And one of the things I am excited about being able to tie in with the Lieutenant Governor of the State of Missouri is also an advocate for tourism. Agritourism, you will see, be one of the growest, fastest industries in the state of Missouri. But if you want farmers to do their best, then you got to get the federal government off their back. That's the continuing theme of this. And you take, for example, the Humane Society of the United States. As we all know how we went through in the state of Missouri, what they've done when they try to control how much livestock you can own, how many you can have in a pen when you wean cattle. When you get those outside organizations coming in here, that's what drives up the cost of farmers. That's what gives them the problems where they can't make the difference between making money and not making money. If you have the EPA come in here, and all of a sudden they want to regulate our feed mills in this state. They want to regulate, the dust you stir up on your land. These are all from the left-wing agenda under the Obama administration that's come down to the state of Missouri since I've been in Jeff City. And if we keep going down that road, we're going to push one of our biggest industries in the state of Missouri out of Missouri. So if I'm the lieutenant governor, I'm going to be fighting for agriculture every day. Whether the Constitution says for me to or not, doesn't matter. I'm going to be an advocate for agriculture because I think it's worth protecting. And agriculture, to me, when I did Right to Farm a couple of years ago, it was never about cattle. It wasn't about horses. It wasn't about row crop. It was truly about a way of life. It's about who we are in Missouri. It's how we grew up. It's the heart and soul of this state. And for us not to protect that against these outside organizations, against the EPA regulatory environment, that's what Missouri agriculture is facing. You let farmers go out there and do their business every day, whether it's row crop or cattle or livestock, they'll be fine. And the opportunities are endless out there in the next 40 years. We just got to make sure we got the infrastructure in place and we give them the tools to need to do what they do best, and that's farm, and leave them alone.
Thank you both.
Could I respond to that?
Sure.
Well, I wish that Senator Parson would stand up to outside interest of foreign ownership of Missouri farmland as strongly as he does other groups. That's what I don't think that's what most Missouri folks feel is a good thing for Missouri, to increase the amount of Missouri farmland that can be owned by foreign interest and open the door for foreign companies, Chinese companies in particular, to expand industrial factory farming in this state. I think that's a big difference between the way I look at this and the way he does. And I think that's something that I've gotten an earful about as I've traveled across this state.
Okay.
Well, I'll be glad to respond to that. It's why Washington, D.C. bureaucrats will never make it in Missouri. Number one, he doesn't even understand what he's talking about, because here's what happened. I actually prevented foreign ownership in the state of Missouri, regulated it where they couldn't own any more land than 1% in the state of Missouri. So this is just another typical smoke and screen that you try to throw out at somebody. And I've been endorsed by almost every ag organization in the state of Missouri. Almost every one. Farm Bureau's been out helping me in this election all of them, because they know what my record is, and I've got a proven record of doing it. Here's the one thing I'll just say about Congressman Carnahan. This is the only thing I need to say about his ag credentials. He's endorsed by the Humane Society of the United States. If you take that endorsement, you're not truly supporting agriculture in the state of Missouri. They have been the number one enemy to this state and tried to destroy our number one industry. And yet, if I would have been him, I would have turned the endorsement down. But he proudly took it, and he's endorsed by the Humane Society of the United States, and that's problematic.
Gentlemen, my next questions actually have to do
Well,
with
I'd
what
actually
you
like
just
to
brought up.
respond to that.
Well,
That's
you will get this. This next question is for you.
perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the majority of agriculture groups, the main ones in this state, which are part of the Missouri Farmers Care Coalition, have fought efforts by the Humane Society of the United States, a leading animal rights group, to restrict livestock production practices in the state. The most recent example is the Right to Farm constitutional amendment, which was narrowly passed by Missouri voters, but it was opposed by the HSUS. These leading farm groups see the HSUS and its national lobbying arm, the Humane Society Legislative Fund, as trying to get rid of livestock production and producers' livelihoods, spending little, if any, dollars to support humane pet shelters. Missouri's Food for America, a group linked to the HSUS, says the Missouri legislature favors so-called corporate agriculture, accusing farmers of not using humane practices and putting smaller farmers last. Congressman Carnahan, you have been endorsed by the Humane Society Legislative Fund. What do you say to Missouri farmers and ranchers who see that group as a direct threat to animal agriculture in this state?
Well, as someone who has a family farm, we've got over 100 head of black Angus beef cattle in Phelps County. I respect what farmers do and respect people that, again, are caring for their land and their livestock. I don't agree with every group out there, and I don't think the Farm Bureau would have given me the Friend of the Farmer Award when I was in the U.S. Congress if I was as bad as you say, Senator Parson. But I also worked with groups like the Farmers Union. So we need to be working together on, it's about common sense solutions. Again, try to find a rural community somewhere that wants to have pollution running off from a factory farm onto their land. I mean, those are common sense issues that need to be addressed. I don't think there's a farmer out there that doesn't think they should treat their livestock humanely. So I think those there's common sense ways to approach that instead of these political games and trying to demonize different groups. We need to find things where we have common ground and to get people to work together in that regard. That's always been my approach. And again, that's why groups as diverse as the Farm Bureau and the Farmers Union gave me awards when I was in Congress, because we worked together with folks across the spectrum.
Farmers Union has come out and worked with the Humane Society of the U.S. Several state groups have done so. Senator Parson, you are chairman of the Missouri Senate Agriculture Committee. Would you care to respond?
Well, there's no doubt. It's just a perfect example of how out of touch a congressman with Missouri values. And this is what's a huge difference between me and Congressman Carnahan are. Anybody in the state of Missouri knows that the HSUS has been nothing but trying to destroy our state. Spent $7 million here trying to destroy our farmers and our farmland in this state. This is not about getting along. This is about trying to run them out of the state, because they are a bad organization for agriculture in this state. Every state agency, when you mentioned Missouri Farmers Care, that actually developed out of Proposition B years ago, and it brought all agriculture together to fight one person. What I call an enemy of the state of Missouri was the HSUS, and I don't back down from that 1 second, nor will I ever. And I don't want to get along with them, because they're about the East and the West Coast. This is what happens when you get in Washington, D.C. You lose touch with the people of Missouri. You lose touch with our farmers. There is nobody out there, no ag organization in this state that supports the Humane Society of the United States with any, I want to say, grit to them at all, because we know we have to fight these people every time. And for the most part of them, they're a fundraising machine that spends. The Humane Society of the United States spends less than 1% of their money on a caravan animal, It's just another activist group out there on the east and west coast. And why we want them in the state of Missouri, I have no idea. And I will stick up any day of the week for Missouri, for our Humane Society in the state of Missouri. I'll stick up and we help our Humane Society back home. But the Humane Society of the United States is just nothing but a phony name. And if you attach yourself to that, you're not supporting agriculture in this state, I can tell you that.
Senator, you have the power now as the Missouri Senate Ag Committee Chairman to guide ag legislation and to legislate. Let's be clear, the Lieutenant Governor cannot do that. If elected, how would you advocate for all of Missouri agriculture and ensure that small farms get the attention that bigger farming operations do?
Let me correct you on just one thing. I'm not the chairman of ag. Senator Munslinger's the chairman of ag up there. That's okay, but I've sat on the ag.
He might get upset.
Yeah, he probably wants that right, so I won't take it away from him.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. Well, first of all, the biggest challenge in facing rural Missouri in agriculture, if you want to, on the agriculture issue, is bridging the gap between rural and urban. That's truly what it is. People in the urban areas, whether you're from Kansas City, St. Louis, Columbia, or Springfield, they're not against farmers. They're not against agriculture. For the most part, a lot of them don't understand exactly what it is that farmers do day in and day out and what it takes to produce that product, that crop, that livestock, to get it to the urban areas. And I think we got a huge responsibility in the state of Missouri to make sure we educate each other on why agriculture is so important, and you bridge the gap between urban and rural. And I think as Lieutenant Governor, you really have control over your schedule and your time and what you want to advocate for. And I think that's one thing that I believe I've worked with the urban areas before, whether it be farm to table, whether it be the farmers markets that are very popular, whether we're trying to get it now in the school systems. In the real world, you would love to have, whenever we put a seed in the ground and that seed sprouts out or that calf hits the ground, to keep that product in the state of Missouri all the way until it gets to people's tables. That would be the ideal world. That's what we need to try to be advocating for in Missouri every day. We don't need to be shipping stuff out of state. We don't need to be taking things beyond our borders. We can keep in our borders. And I've tried time after time, and there's plenty of people working on that very issue in Missouri right now. And I think we're going to break through on some of these landmark decisions, landmark cases that we're doing in Missouri. I think you're going to find out agriculture is going to be huge in this state in the next 10 to 20 years.
Any final thoughts, Congressman, on agriculture?
Yeah, again, there are so many rich assets here, being able to bridge that urban-rural divide. My background is uniquely suited to do that, having grown up in rural Missouri, represented urban and rural areas, worked very closely with farm groups, the University of Missouri Extension, and others in terms of some of the linking the local farmers to urban restaurants, very successful programs in some of the St. Louis schools to be sure they're getting local foods from local farmers, and even incorporating that into the education program in the schools. So the kids really get an early appreciation for where their food comes from and what's involved. And so those kind of programs, I think there's a big opportunity in our state to bridge that gap, incorporate it into our education, but also the economic impact it can really be big in our state.
One thing I'm proud of in this run for lieutenant governor, I'm probably the only farmer that I know of that's actually running for a statewide office. You can have family farms, but do you really work the land? Are you the guy out there every day that goes and checks on your cows? Are you there when you wean the cows? Are you there when they plant the row crops of this? Do you set a corner post? Do you fix a fence? I think that is so unique that it's been a long time since we've had a real farmer. And I don't say anything about Congressman Carnahan farm. If he's had a family farm, that's great. The big question is, do you work the farm? Do you go out there every day and you work the land? And the truth of the matter is, I think the congressman tell you this, he lives in downtown St. Louis in a very influential neighborhood in St. Louis. I don't think Congressman works the farm every day. You might say you have one, you might have cows, but the question becomes, do you really do it? And that's what I believe is the true differences between me and Congressman Carnahan when you talk about this thing. If you're going to advocate for agriculture, truly you need to know about agriculture. It's not about reading an article. It's not about what somebody tells you. It's about doing it day in and day out. And you live that. You know what a tractor costs. You know when the cattle prices go down, what it means for your farm to pay the bills, to pay the mortgages. That's what real farmers in this state do. And I think it's important that you understand them in a day-by-day operation. And I think that's going to be a huge advantage, being the next lieutenant governor of the state of Missouri, talking about agriculture.
That said, would you advocate as lieutenant governor organic production? Would you advocate urban farming in addition to conventional?
Sure. Look, the congressman tried to hit on a hot button issue a while ago when you're talking about CAFOs. It's what, look, I support all farmers in the state of Missouri. If you're legally a farmer or rancher in the state of Missouri, I'm going to support you. Whether it's organic, whatever it is you want to be, as long as you're doing it within the Constitution, with the laws of this state, I'm fine with that. I don't care what people do. I mean, anything we can do to become better farmers, to be better producers in this state. I don't think we should ever discourage anybody from wanting to go out and work the land, because to me it's a God-given right that you can go out there and work your own land. You bought it, you paid for it. Go out there and do what it is you feel like you need to do.
Gentlemen, thank you both for answering my questions about agriculture. We'll be back with more on the Lieutenant Governor Forum.
The 2016 Missouri Lieutenant Governor Candidates Forum, co-hosted by Brownfield Ag News and MissouriNet. The 2016 Missouri Lieutenant Governor Candidates Forum, co-hosted by Brownfield Ag News and MissouriNet.
We appreciate everybody tuning in to MissouriNet.com and also on a number of our affiliates' websites today. I'm Brian Hauswirth, the news director at MissouriNet, joined by Julie Harker, who is the news director of Brownfield. We've certainly had an informative forum. Senator Mike Parson on my left, former Congressman Russ Carnahan on my right, and I definitely want to get into transportation. I want to try to get into jobs, because those are all very important. But obviously the CAFO issue, some other issues focus on a difference. I do want to ask briefly about the tone of the campaign, because there have been some ads that each of you have run against the other, and I'll start with Congressman Carnahan's ad. He has your former chief of staff, Bub Zahulan, a former Republican lawmaker, taped a commercial with a Democrat from Columbia, and they brought up the Chinese farmland issue. But he said that Senator, when you were in the Missouri legislature, you wanted taxpayers to pay for valet parking. A, have you seen the ad? And B,
Sure.
your thoughts on Mr. Zahulan?
I've seen the ads. First of all, let me talk about my former employee. Number one, he resigned from my office. That's what happened there. Look, I've hired probably over 100 employees in my career, whether it was sheriff or whether it was small business, and the people at State Capitol. Let me tell you one thing: if you come to work for me, you're going to work. The bottom line is, my office is one of the busiest offices in Jeff City, and you're going to be accountable. I always hold my employees to a higher standard. If you cannot cut that, then you're just not going to be there, and that's simply what happened. He chose to resign. It's unfortunate he did what he did, but those things happen. So
was he not? Were you saying he wasn't working, or what was going on? Or can you not elaborate if it's personal?
Well, he resigned.
Sure.
That gets into a lengthy
Sure,
story.
I
But the
got
bottom
you.
line is he resigned.
Okay.
And he wasn't meeting the goals that I thought. I told you I keep a high standard for my employees. You got to work. You got to come in. You got to work hard. And that's all there is to it. If you don't do that, you're not going to be working for me very long. The Chinese deal's a bunch of baloney.
Okay.
It's a bunch of malarkeys, all that is, trying to scare the average citizen out there of what it is. I don't even know what they're talking about unless it's Smithfield, I guess. But Smithfield hires 1,100 Missouri citizens that work every day, if that's what the congressmen they're doing. It's just another, this is what happens when you become a DC insider. You start running phony commercials that are not true. There's no factual basis. And let me address the valet parking, because I was glad. And if they did their homework, if Congressman would have did his, every recording in the state of Missouri in the Senate, whether you're in committee, whether you're on the floor, is all publicly recorded. You will never find one instance where I talked about valet parking in the state capitol. Never. It is an outright lie, period. If you want to know where it come from a liberal paper in St. Louis and a Democrat that did it. But I've never, ever asked for valet parking at the state capitol. And if you want to talk about valet parking at the capitol, then we ought to be talking to Congressman about his trip to the Antarctic. If you want to talk about, if you're worried about valet parking at the state capitol here, he takes a trip to the Antarctic in a little group, which he wouldn't admit to when the Wall Street Journal called and asked him about it, and spent $50,000. Taxpayer money, I might add. Taxpayer money doing things like that. So to come up with a bogus thing about valet parking, plus it's not very original because they tried to use it in the primary election against me. So it's all phony.
Senator Parson, I appreciate that. Congressman, if you want to address the Antarctic and certainly the valet parking, and
well,
also
first I want to talk about the ad.
Sure.
So first of all, yeah, Bubs O'Hulan was the senator's former chief of staff. He made it real clear in several press interviews that he didn't like the way things were working in the senator's office in terms of transparency, in terms of the excessive influence of lobbyists, him being the second highest recipient of lobbyist gifts in the state, over 900 gifts totaling $45,000. One press account described him as a lobbyist magnet. Maybe that's why his office was so busy. But in terms of the valet parking issue, Senator Parson stood on the floor of the Senate and offered an amendment to add $50,000 for parking services for legislators in the Capitol. That's a fact. You can look at the record in the Senate. It's actually a recording of it, Senator.
Okay. I do want to ask one quick thing about the tone, and then I want to get into transportation and jobs. But the ad that I've seen Senator Parson run has kind of linked you with President Obama for your vote on the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that.
Could you respond to
Absolutely. So this is part of a political game that Senator Parsons and others have played with Missourians' health care. The Affordable Care Act was put together with a bunch of Republican ideas about marketplace health care systems and competition in hopes to get Republican support, which of course they ultimately decided they weren't going to support anything that the president wanted. And then here in Missouri, Senator Parsons and others have refused $2 billion of our money at a time when we have a rural health care crisis in Missouri. 4 rural hospitals have closed. Everywhere I go, I get an earful about the difficulty in access to rural hospitals, and that money, we're losing the jobs from that money, and the coalition behind it. The Missouri Chamber of Commerce, the Missouri Hospital Association, professional groups. I mean, talk about economic development. We're losing jobs and health care for hundreds of thousands of Missourians, including an estimated 14,000 veterans. That money's not going to work here because of continued political games that Senator Parsons and others in our state have played. That needs to stop. This should be bipartisan. Senator Bond went to lobby to get folks to get support for this, Senator, as you well know. But it was no, more political games, and we've lost this money that we've paid has gone to other states now. So we need to stop the political games and get focused on putting that money to work for Missouri.
This is one thing the congressman hit on, and he's exactly right. He should know all about the lobbyist arena because he was a lobbyist. His wife still is a Washington, D.C. lobbyist. And we talked about Senator Bond. Bond got paid to lobby for the issues. What he got done, it's not, most people in Missouri got this figured out. You know, when you're a lobbyist, you get paid to advocate for the issue. You get money for it. And let me tell you something. Either Congressman's been hanging around Hillary Clinton too long, or something, because if you think Obamacare and you're sitting here today trying to tell the people of Missouri this is okay, this is a good thing, this is helping our veterans, this is helping
Senator,
our seniors.
be honest about the Medicaid
there is
expansion.
Absolutely no way that this is going to be, and everybody knows it. And here's the reality of it, and this is why I say when you're in Washington, D.C., you're out of touch with Missourians, and here's why. How many people got a notice in the last weeks their insurance is going up 25%? That's not fluff. That's not baloney what he's telling you. He's just telling you words. But somebody's going to have to pay that. And you're talking about hard-working Missourians out here that can't afford it. And we all know that. And yet we're still trying to defend Obamacare, which I might add to what he said. And I encourage you to look on my Facebook, and it'll have him talking about Obamacare and talking about how great an issue it is, and there's going to be a surplus. I challenge the congressman today to tell any Missourians there's a surplus coming out of Obamacare.
Senator, you know that 85% of folks under the Affordable Care Act won't see those increases. And yes, we need to have more competition, more private sector competition and more options. That's what makes the system work better. But no, Senator Parson wants to lead the more political games and not find solutions. That's not what Missourians are looking for.
I do want to try in our final about 5, 6, 7 minutes ballpark here, guys, to get in the issue of jobs and transportation. It's very important, and I'll start with transportation. You were a former sheriff. You saw a lot of traffic fatalities. Congressman, you and the previous Congressman, Richard Gephardt, had Highway 21, one of the, as they call it, the bloodiest highways in the country, for that matter. So you've both worked on this issue, no question about that. I'll start with you, Senator. MoDOT, I did a story last month. They said that Missouri has seen a 14% increase in traffic crash fatalities between 2014 and 2015, from 766 to 870, that nationally 96 people are dying every day. In Missouri, I was told we're losing 2 people every 11 hours due to motor vehicle crashes. What should the Missouri legislature do to address transportation, and how would you push that? I'll ask you both, and I'll start with you, Senator.
No, that's fine. First of all, I've been a supporter of doing something with our infrastructure in this state. You got to do something with the ports, you got to do something with the airports, you got to do something with rail, and you got to do something with our highway system. If we keep kicking this can down the road, it's going to be problematic. I took a vote on the Senate floor this year when most people advised me not to do it because I was running for lieutenant governor, because somebody was going to use it against me in an ad, which kind of what the congressmen are talking about a while ago, how they use these ads against you. I did it because it was the right thing to do. I didn't care about me running for lieutenant governor of the state of Missouri. I voted to give the people a choice if they wanted to vote for a use tax on gas. That's the only thing I did. I'm not backing down from that one bit, from doing the right thing. And this is what's wrong with a lot of politicians today, because they're in the political arena, they don't want to do it, or they just stay with the ranking files. That's not being a leader in the state of Missouri. But we have to pay for this. We're going to have to do something with infrastructure in the state, and you're going to have to pay for it. And you're going to have to find a formula to do that. I mean, you just can't ignore this like this problem's not going to happen. And you got to have a plan. But it goes back to the original question we talked in here earlier. Can you get along, be bipartisan, with whoever the next governor is, whoever's in the House of Representatives, and who's in the Senate? But I will tell you this. If the congressman brings his Washington, D.C. influence, and you're going to vote 99% with President Obama, he's not going to reach across the aisle and get anything done. And that's just a fact, and that's a proven fact, the way the system works in Washington, D.C.
Former Congressman Carnahan, your response to what the senator said, and also to my original question.
Well, I feel like, the 8 years I was honored to serve in Washington, I don't know about the other 50 years that I've worked here in the state of Missouri, but my record is one of working in a very bipartisan way. Transportation, I served on the House Transportation Committee. The motivation for me getting on that committee, in Jefferson County, there were 2 highways that are among the top 10 most deadly highways in America. They had nicknames like Blood Alley and Death Valley. And there was a citizens group that was organized from families who had lost loved ones on these highways. And these roads weren't even on the state highway plan. Yet we worked with them. I got on this committee. Again, we work together in a bipartisan way. There's not a Democrat or Republican way to build highways. But we have to do more than say we're going to do something. I believe that we need to develop a ground-up plan, start at the grassroots level, and that citizens know We're going to develop a plan that makes sense, they can identify their local priorities, put those together into the state priorities, determine the cost, and let voters know that at the end of the day, they're going to drive this train. They're going to help develop it, and they're the ones who are going to vote on it to prove it up or down, not somebody in Jefferson City. So that's one of the things that I am very committed to do, to build that kind of consensus, because I think if the common sense, citizens-based approach is developed in terms of what our future highway and transportation system needs to look like, and the voters know that they're going to get to approve it, I think that's the kind of way we can get this really off the fence and move important transportation and infrastructure investments forward. We know these are some of the best investments we can make in terms of safety, tourism, farm-to-market roads that we can make, create some of the best paying jobs, and can really help jumpstart our economy. So I'm very committed to that as a high priority, to help build that consensus. And if I'm honored enough to be elected lieutenant governor, I want to do that. I look forward to working with Senator Parsons in the Senate to do that.
I do want to ask one quick question about jobs, and then I'll give you both a chance to close, and we'll wrap up, and we'll keep this one fairly short. It's kind of a yes/no. Right to work. Senator Parson, would you support right to work? If obviously you can't vote on it, Lieutenant Governor, unless there's a tie, but would you support it?
I would support it, and I've always supported it.
You
I have
would.
a track record of supporting it.
Congressman?
Right to work is not about right to work. It's about driving down wages in Missouri, and I'm absolutely against it.
You guys obviously disagree on that issue, and
One
you
thing-
have over the years.
One thing I'd like to add about
Sure.
the right to work situation and where people are. I'm proud of my campaign. We have over 2,500 different donors across the state. Individual people out here, hardworking Missouri, just donated to our campaign. That's where 95% of my money comes from in my campaign. This is a perfect issue to bring up. Almost his entire campaign is funded by unions, not hardworking Missourians, by special interest group as unions and trial attorneys. And that's the difference between people out here trying to stick up for the state of Missouri. Whether you agree or not, having the special interest totally fund your campaigns is wrong.
Congressman?
I think union workers in the state are going to be surprised and disappointed that Senator Parsons thinks that they're not hardworking Missourians. They are.
Okay. I'm going to give each of you a chance to make a closing statement. We're going out before a good radio audience, and obviously the stream as well. I'll start with you, Senator Parson, then I'll let the Congressman give his final thoughts. Why should Missourians vote for you for Lieutenant Governor in a week and a day?
Right. Well, I think you just need to know the difference in the two candidates. A United States Army veteran that served this country, a former sheriff in law enforcement of 20-plus years, a third-generation farmer that really works the farm day in and day out, a small business owner, a family man that's started a humble life, that's been blessed and fortunate in my career to live the American dream. And I think to preserve that American dream for the next generations is the most important thing we can do as statesmen. And the difference between me and Congressman Carnahan is pretty simple. If you believe in Barack Obama, the President of the United States, which he supported his entire time in Congress, if you believe in Hillary Clinton, which he's endorsed, if you believe in the Obamacare, which he supported and went on the trail to try to sell that to Missourians, which was just a bag of tricks, is all it was. When he was in Congress, the national debt went up $8.8 trillion when he was sitting in a congressman's seat. He compared in a congressman hearing Harry S. Truman to Hillary Clinton. Harry S. Truman to Hillary Clinton. That's a joke for the people of Missouri that we had a proud president that lived here, in my opinion. He has been part of the problem that's got our country in the shape it is, with the over-regulatory environment that we live in. Those are the total differences between me and Congressman Carnahan. How in the world, when you've been such of the problem in the United States Congress and our federal government, and you want to come back here now and tell Missourians, oh, I'm here to help, I'm here to fix things, when it's been nothing but a total disaster the entire time he served the people of Missouri and Washington, D.C.
That's Senator Mike Parson, former Congressman Russ Carnahan. Why should people vote for you for Lieutenant Governor in a week and a day?
Well, first of all, thank you all for having us, and I appreciate Senator Parsons' showing up for this forum. He missed 3 before at the Westlake landfill in St. Louis, and missed one in Columbia with mayors, and then missed one in Springfield with doctors about Medicaid expansion. So I'm glad that he came here today. I am running because I love this state, and I think people of goodwill working together can actually get things done. People are tired of the political food fight in Jefferson City. They're tired of the special interest that are just running the show. And if you stop 10 people out on the street anywhere in Missouri and said, do you think it's working for you here that we have a system that allows unlimited political donations, unlimited lobbyist gifts that Senator Parsons is the number 2 recipient of, and almost no limits for the revolving door from legislator to lobbyist, they'll give you an earful. If you ask people if they think we should expand Medicaid, invest those dollars here, have better access to hospitals, especially in rural Missouri, they say, of course you do. That's common sense. Senator Parsons doesn't believe that. If you think we ought to have protect those farmers out there from more foreign ownership and more, no regulation at all with industrial factory farms, then Senator Parsons is your guy. But I think if you want a common sense approach and a proven record working together both in the Missouri House and in the U.S. House, that's always been my approach. I've always had an open door, and I've worked with both parties to actually get things done. I think that's what people expect.
Well, I want to thank both of the candidates for joining us. We've covered as many issues as we can in the time that we've had, including qualifications, the statutory responsibilities, the fact that whoever wins could be voting in the Senate and could be presiding, and then other issues as well, agriculture, economic development, and jobs. I also want to thank Julie Harker. Good job, as always, Julie, on the agriculture issues. Folks, the election is a week and a day away. It is Tuesday, November the 8th. We encourage everyone to vote, and we'll have election night coverage that night, all night, on MissouriNet. Senator Mike Parson, Republican of Bolivar, former Congressman Russ Carnahan, Democrat from St. Louis. We appreciate both of you coming in and wish you both the best.
Thank you for having us here today.
Thank you.
And we appreciate everyone for tuning in today. This is Brian Hauswirth. Have a great day.
The 2016 Missouri Lieutenant Governor Candidates Forum, co-hosted by Brownfield Ag News and MissouriNet.